channel. My name is Marissa Yvonne, and this is a place where we love God, we love ourselves, and we love others. So, as you more than likely have seen by the title, this is going to be my testimony. This is going to be my story, things that I've experienced, how that affected my relationship with God, where I'm at today, all that kind of stuff. And bear with me because I am feeling my anxiety a little bit. I'm feeling a little anxious. And so I had to pray before I even started recording. And I'm just still, I'm still trying to navigate. Simply because this is just, there are pieces of my story that I just have not shared. There are people that are connected to me that don't even know some of this. And that has me a little shaken, if I'm honest. Yesterday, I'm filming this August 15th, 2023. And yesterday was my 27th birthday. And for weeks leading up to my birthday, I really felt the tug of God in sharing my story. And as I said, that made me very anxious because there are just parts of my story that I have not shared that people just do not know. And I was like, ooh, we gonna lay it bare, Jesus, for real? But we gonna lay it bare, and it's going to be raw and uncut and very transparent. And my prayer is that even if this just touches one somebody, that I did what needed to be done. And so here we go. So if you've watched my Meet Marissa, which is kind of like my opening to get to know me, then you saw that I was a preacher's kid. My father accepted his call into ministry when I was about 11. I grew up in church. I grew up as a pastor's grandkid. Then my father accepted his call, so that made me a PK, a preacher's kid. And then after my grandfather passed, my father took over the ministry, and so then I was a pastor's kid. And I grew up in church. It was about probably 12 or 13 where I actually began to take church seriously. Like, it wasn't just, oh, this is what we do. We go to church, I sing in the choir, I usher, I dance, I do all these things. But it was really about 12 or 13 where I really began to take my walk with God seriously, where I would go to church and I would actually begin to listen to the word, not just socialize with my friends and chop it up and kiki and pass notes, but actually begin to listen to the word, becoming intent in Sunday school, listening intently, studying intently, as it pertains to Sunday school, Bible study, things of that sort. And I began to take it seriously. And I would have conversations with people, and they're just like, you show such a love for God, you demonstrate such a faith. When are you going to actually take that step to step of confession, to actually step into salvation officially? And I can't explain it. And quite frankly, I would not recommend someone else to have the stance that I had. I just knew I would know when the time is right. I would know when it was time for me to take that step. And I had a confidence that I would not leave this world without having taken that step, without making that confession. And I know, like, day to day is not promised, second to second, minute to minute is not promised. And so I know that was a big step, like this idea that I'm gonna wait till the right time. Like, the right time is now, right? Why are we waiting? And so it was not until April of 2015, I officially made the step. Now keep in mind, it was at like 12 or 13 that I began to really like take church seriously, began to listen intently, things of that sort. And it was not until spring semester of my freshman year in college where I actually made the confession. And so keep in mind that gap. Part of my story that I really want to share is not just as much of my salvation story as much as it is how since salvation I have to fight to hold on to God's hand and to remain in that relationship. And so I wanted to give that backstory just so you can have a full, well-rounded picture of what comes after, right? Because that's the part that we are not prepared for. Like, you don't enter salvation and realize what's going to come after peace. And that is the big part. So I'm someone who struggles with anxiety and depression. And I feel that we're in a place in life where the church is talking about mental health just a little bit more. That it's not just pray and give it to Jesus, but that we're actually encouraging believers to engage in therapy, get some professional help. And for me, where I began to see those signs was when I lost my grandfather. Keep in mind, I lost my grandfather back in 2012. And I had lost people before then. However, that one hit differently. And so that was the first moment where I considered what life would look like if I didn't live it anymore. And it was hard. However, I remember I had a teacher, it was my chemistry teacher in high school, because my grandfather passed my junior year of high school. And my chemistry, I was in chemistry honors, and my teacher, Miss Davidson Tracy, if you, for any reason, ever watch this, it was a conversation that I had with her, like, after everything had happened. We had the funeral, all of that. We buried him, and it was the first time I was actually returning back to school, because I was out of school for like 2 weeks, about 2.5 weeks when we got the news. And so I returned back to school, and I was struggling. And she pulled me aside, and she wanted to check on me, and she was just like, "Are you okay?" And I'm just like, "No, not really. Like, I'm struggling." Like, I was zoned out in class. I didn't have the energy to fight. And she was like, "You know, didn't you say like your grandfather was like a big advocate for education?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Would he be okay with you giving up? Like, not fighting anymore? Like, do you think that is what he would want, for you to throw in the towel?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you're gonna have to like fight through this and push through this, and know that if your goal is to make him proud, that's where the push needs to come from." And I began to push. And, you know, I graduated high school, got into college. Awesome, right? And what I realized for me I would get triggered, my anxiety and my depression would get triggered by two things: grief, and when I'm extremely overwhelmed and stressed out. When there's just so much on my plate and I cannot navigate it, I can go into a very dark space. And going into a dark space for me would mean I do consider not being here. Sometimes that looks like actually having an ideation, an unalive ideation, or that could look like I just want to crawl into a hole. I just want to crawl into a hole, put the dirt on me, and just leave me be. Allow whatever happened to happen. And it's a dark place. I can go to a very dark place. And oftentimes, I didn't know how to talk about it, so I didn't. And I would tell people, like, what I would deem as little signs, like, I'm losing it, I'm going crazy, I'm losing my mind. And people just saw me as just goofy. Or like, oh, she's so silly, she's so goofy. And so they will make up in their minds that that's what I'm doing. I'm just being silly and goofy. And ultimately, for me, those were actual cries for help. And people just were not getting, they were not getting that memo. And so, yeah. And so it added to me feeling very alone and misunderstood because people weren't seeing what I was deeming as my actual cries for help. Like, hey, I'm about to lose it here. Like, I'm going crazy. People would just laugh. And so this is why I was stressed. Check on your strong friends. Those friends that seem to have it together. Those friends that are like always being silly and goofy. Like, or you just see them as being silly and goofy. Like, check on them. Check on your friends. Check on your people. Check on your people. Because you never know what someone is going through. And so, like, I made it through my 4 years, and that final semester of college was the one that, like, about took me out. And it was just so much on my plate that was like the second point in my life where I really began to consider, like, can I just crawl into a hole and just die? Like, and for me, death has never been scary. And so I was okay with it. And so you go throughout life, and I graduate, I get my degree, I'm working 2 jobs still, and it's still just a lot on my plate. But I'm navigating, I'm managing. Just for putting in context, I graduated high school in 2014. I graduated college in 2018. And so then we fast forward to 2020. And for me, 2020 to 2022 were probably the most challenging years that I had to face. And so the pandemic hit us all, and that's something in and of itself, right? And right before the pandemic hit, I had just started a new job. I had started that job in February of 2020, and then the pandemic began to really hit us about March. And by like April in my job, like, everything that I had began to learn about my job, we just had to start like pivoting, honestly. And so I navigated through that. And I'm someone, I live alone. And so now I'm not going to church. I live away from my family because I moved away to go to school, and I stayed away. And so I live away from my family, living alone. I'm working a job that I'm working from home a lot of the time. I would have interactions with clients, doing Zoom and things of that sort, or a phone call with my supervisors or my coworkers every now and again, something like that. But I spent a lot of time inside, and it wasn't extremely difficult. That part wasn't extremely difficult for me with being alone because I'm an introvert. So that part was okay for me. It was more so the added piece of the job that I was doing now, because now I was working as a parent counselor with families that had open DCF investigations. And so those kind of the kind of things that you see in the social work field, it's hard. And when you have cases where children are getting hurt, parents are dealing with substance abuse, and so it's leading these children to go unattended and get neglected. Like, you have children being abused either physically or intimately. I don't know what all I can and cannot say on YouTube, but like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it was difficult to navigate because I'm also not having my normal outlets, being able to go out and hang out with friends or hang out with family. You're inside. You spend a lot of time inside. We're on lockdown, and what we thought was going to be a short period of time turned into, quite frankly, even in 2023, we are still dealing with it. I know people that are still catching COVID, right? Like, in different strains of it, like, we're still fighting this thing. We're just trying to navigate as best as we know how. And so you have that, and those changes and transitions, and so the toll that takes on you. And it was a lot. I do think I began to kind of navigate in the best that I knew how. And you add on top of that, I'm losing people. Between 2020 and 2022, I'm losing people left and right, left and right, left and right, left and right. And some of it is just tragedy. People unfortunately are getting murdered. Some of it was just, old age. People already having health issues. You lose them people. And then you get to specifically 2021, and that was probably the most challenging year because I had a childhood friend who was murdered. You're losing people due to illness and COVID. Had a major loss due to COVID. And it was hard because that was the moment my faith was tested. Where, like, we hear people say, ask and you shall receive. And it's like, what do you do when you are asking God, when you're pulling on heaven, you are crying out, you're fasting, you're praying, you're like, God, I need you to do this thing. I need you to show up in this way. And he doesn't do it. What do you do? And that's what happened. This person was sick. You're pulling on heaven, you fasting and praying, had got COVID, and you're fasting and praying. You're just like, God, you are a miracle worker. You are a healer. You are God. You are the big God himself. Like, if anybody can do it, you can. God, I believe that you're going to heal them in the name of Jesus. They're going to come out of this hospital, and this is going to be a testimony. And God, you're going to do this for your glory. And we're just going to praise you and honor you and love you and magnify you because you are God. You are God. So I just know you're going to do it. And then you get that notification to say they're gone. And you're just like, well, wait, what? Huh? Jesus, what? And I had a natural human reaction to where I was like, God, I'm disappointed. I'm angry. I'm hurt that you allowed this to happen. And so that was the first time in my life where I experienced being angry with God. And I didn't know how to navigate it. It was hard. And quite frankly, it still is. Like, there are still challenges. But I was like, okay, Lord, I don't know why you did this. I don't know why you allowed this to happen. However, okay, I'm gonna still try to push, right? I'm gonna still try to push through this, and I'm still going to church. I'm still serving. I'm still praying. I'm still studying. I'm still showing up. And after that loss, a little over a month later, I lose my father. My father passed November of 2021, unexpectedly. And it was hard because that weekend, someone I know's father was rushed to the hospital immediately. And I'm pulling on heaven because I'm like, okay, God, like, we can't take another L, Jesus. Like, we just had a major loss. Like, we haven't even fully recovered from that. Like, God, we can't take another loss. So I'm pulling on heaven, like, God, please bring him through. We can't take this. We can't do this. Da 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 da. He comes out okay, and then I get the news that I lost my daddy. And once again, you go back to that place of what? Like, what is happening? You go back to that place of being disappointed, being angry, being hurt. Like, God, we just got to do something. And I pushed through that to get back into pouring into our relationship. And then now my daddy's gone, and what am I supposed to do? And it was one of those things, like, and just being frank, where it was even more difficult because it's like, I'm sitting here pulling on heaven, interceding, laying at the foot of your throne for somebody else's daddy, and then you allow mine to leave. Like, what is happening? Like, what? And it was sudden. It was unexpected. I get the news, and I'm sitting here on the phone like, what? And I'm like, my brother was the one that called me. And I'm like, this can't, what? I don't think I heard you correctly. And so unfortunately, I had to have him repeat it because I'm just like, you didn't say what I think you said, but I know that I believe I heard you. And I know that, like, we don't prank each other. So I know this is not a joke. And even if we were to tell jokes and do pranks and stuff like that, I know that this is not something that you would do. So I know that if it's coming out of your mouth, that it's serious, but I'm just like, what? And so, as stated, I'm the baby of 4. I have 2 older sisters and an older brother, then there's me. And so I'm just like, what? I call back home. They confirm. And I lose it. And I call my spiritual parents, and I let them know, like, because they're the only connection that I have. Like, where I live now, like, that's about it. They're the only people I'm really connected to, for real, in the city that I live in now. And so I call them to let them know, like, hey, I gotta go back home because my daddy just died. Like, what? And they're like, you can hear it, like, what, huh, like, what, did you just say what we think you just said? Like, what is happening? And call my boss to let her know, like, I'm leaving, I'm about to hit the road right now because I gotta go home. And you hear it in her voice, like, oh my gosh, no, right? And keep in mind, like, she's the one that's lost both her parents, so she knows that feeling. And I go home, you know, you take care of everything, you do what you gotta do. And my family even told me, like, though you are the youngest of my siblings, I took on the strength of my family. And I handled a lot of it. I carried my family through because, you know, I have my mother now. I have my siblings. I have nieces and nephew at the time that were walking through this thing. My dad has siblings. My mom has siblings. He was a pastor of a church, so now you have the church who is now without their pastor. Like, it's a lot. And the part about that is you go in and you be the strong one. You handle what needs to be handled. You do the arrangements. You sign the paperwork. You do this. You do that. And you carry your family. And, you know, you get through that process. But what happens now when I return back home to my day-to-day life, return back to work? But I have not really grieved in that process because I was focused on taking care of everyone. I was focused on making sure everyone was taken care of, making sure everything, they were eating, that they were resting, that they didn't have to worry about a lot of stuff. I'm carrying my family. And I did not grieve. I'm angry with God. I'm hurt. I'm disappointed. I am outright pissed. Like, if we gonna call a spade, like, I am pissed. And I have to now return back to my life, and I'm struggling. And then you get, and I'm gonna say this because I know people mean well. I know they do. I know they mean well. But then you return back to life and the regular scheduled programming of work and ministry and all this kind of stuff, and you have people that's just like, you know, God makes no mistakes and it's gonna be okay, and you just gotta pray your way through and praise your way through and push your way through. And it's like, respectfully, get out my face. Baby, get out my face. I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to hear it. Like, you can respectfully miss me with that. Like, I'm good. I don't want to hear it. And you have all these emotions, and majority of them are extremely negative. And I went through all the stages. It's what, like, you got bargaining, you got anger, you got depression, you got, I think the other one is denial, and then acceptance. Like, you have, like, all these different stages. And I hadn't gotten to the acceptance piece. I went through a lot of the anger. I think anger was the biggest one for me. The other piece, I went through bargaining in the initial stage. In the initial stage of getting the news, throwing some stuff in a bag, and getting on the road to go home, I went through that, like, especially on the drive. But once I got home, it was like, do what needs to be done. Step into the strength. Step into take care of your family. Because what do you do? Like, how do you navigate that space? Like, you don't. We've never had to navigate this, right? Like, so it's like you have your mother who's not lost her husband and her best friend. You have your siblings who have lost their father. You've lost your father. And you have your nieces and nephew who's not lost their papa. And it's just like aunties and uncles who have now lost another sibling. Because unfortunately, on my dad's side, he wasn't the first sibling to leave. And so his siblings have now gone through their third loss of a sibling. Like, and it was sudden. Like, it was he left and he didn't come back. He went out for the day and did not come back. And yeah, and so I struggled because it's like, my story is I grew up in a two-parent household. So I had never had to go a day without my parents. Like, I never had to. Like, every day I got home from school, they were there, right? Even though I may have moved away and lived away, like, it was nothing to get on the road and come go back home. It was nothing for my parents to get on the road to come see me. A phone call, a text message, FaceTime. Like, it was nothing to do those things. And it's like, what do you do when, even though I'm an adult, I was a daddy's girl. And so it's like, I love to be under my daddy. Like, even at my grown age, I would still crawl into the bed. And my daddy loved black and white Westerns, and I would crawl in the bed and I'd watch the Westerns with him. The last time I saw him, it was at my brother's house, and he was laying on the couch, and they were all in the living room when I got in, and I literally went around saying hey to everybody, and then I literally crawled onto the couch and laid with my daddy, right? Like, I at a big age, I still did that. Like, I was a daddy's girl. I loved to be near him, up under him, close to him. Like, I loved it. We didn't even necessarily have to be talking about nothing, just sitting, eating snacks and watching TV, which is probably the things we both just love to do, because I also am, like, in my personality so much like my father. And so it's like, how do I navigate this space where it's like, yes, I'm an adult, but like, daddy, I still need you. Like, I still want to be able to call my daddy and talk to him about X, Y, and Z, like, whatever the case may be. And it's like, no matter how many times I call your number, you're never going to pick up. And so now all you have is the memories, the pictures, the phone calls, the text messages, the voicemails, the videos, whatever. Like, but it's like, I still want you here. And for me, I'm someone who I grieve in isolation. And that is not necessarily the most healthiest thing. And so when I got back home and return back to work and all these kind of things, I would retreat into myself. I would keep the house dark. Sometimes I wouldn't talk to people, wouldn't go out. And I would just sit and cry sometimes, you know. And if you know anything about grief, then you know that it can hit you at the most random times, bro. Like, it will hit you at the most random times. Like, I was just talking about this with my best friend. Like, it's not just the dates of significance, right? Like their birthday or, you know, the passing anniversary or any of that. Like a day that was necessarily memorable or what have you. Sometimes it's just those random days. It's that random Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and something triggers it. It can be a song, it can be a smell, it can just be just a random memory. It could be something happening. You're just like, oh man, they would love this, bro. Like, they would love this so much. Whatever. Like, it can just be so random. And I went through a lot of dark days. A lot. And when I would consider not being here as an alive, I had a plan. I got up, threw some clothes on, walked out, got into my car, and I drove in the direction of where I knew the rain was, because I felt that it would help mask things.